All right, now Paul is too generous. Hello, everyone. And I'm really, really happy to be here. Paul, I came mainly to see them and then to see the rest of you. And also, I had no idea that this will be filmed. And now I have to watch my language because I tend to say what I think. I do have, I maybe just tell you, let me see. Oh, it works. You saw my name, and you know we are in London, and the date is right. And just very quick background, just to see where I'm coming from in order to talk about what I'm going to talk about. So I'm Croatian originally. I'm a PhD in molecular biology. I worked on protein translation, basic fundamental science, and then came for postdoc to Geneva for 3 years. And after those 3 years at the Medical University at Geneva, moved to Serono. So my first entry into pharma was Serono, later Merck Serono, multiple sclerosis at that time, 20 years ago. So now it's 20 years that I'm in pharma business or biotech. And there I started through medical information as a contractor, then safety for a year, and then clinical development science group for 6 years, and then moved to Shire, where I became project leader for the first time in a more overarching function. And at those times, Shire was very generous and formed people like me, project leaders or program leaders, by exposing us to different functions. So I had a rotation in market access for a year and commercial expansion of ADH drugs to Japan and China, 6 months. I mean, that was something. Today, who affords this type of luxury to anyone because everything is a rush. There's no wait to form people. And then I returned back to R&D program leadership role. After 6 years in Shire, I went to Galapagos, where then I headed the group of program leads. And that's where I led personally that program where we all led the program, because obviously without a team, nothing happens. And most recently, I worked at Unicure, which is a gene therapy company that's downsized recently, and project leaders were declared non-essential function, and we were let go. And so I'm back now at Unicure part-time consulting, because they figured it's actually an essential role, especially for the programs that are in good standing and that need to keep rolling on a on a fast basis, because time is precious, as you know, in the industry where we are, in everything. But I'm now an independent consultant, and I do have more than one client, as one has to have in this type of setup of self-employment. I work with another company in Geneva and one other company in London, but predominantly now helping Unicure back in my old role. So that's about me. And today I want to start, so I want to tell you about my vision, which is by no means the right one. It's just based on this experience that I told you about. A little bit about structural considerations about global product, program, project, asset teams, as they call them. You know, don't be focused on, how we call them. We all know the concept we're talking about, because this is how we work in matrix. We have functions, and then functions deploy subject matter experts to the team that then works on a given task, i.e. project. Yeah. And so if we start with the structures of those teams, first let me state the problem statement. This is my cartoon that you all saw probably a million times on LinkedIn or somewhere. But it's a really good one, because this is how the pharma used to work, if you remember, many years ago. And remember the first hurdle, second hurdle, third hurdle, regulatory, and then fourth hurdle, payers, and those were hurdles. There was no seamless and smooth way of thinking in an integrated way. You jump one after the other. And that doesn't work anymore. The time has changed in industry. It's very competitive. Everything is very different than it was 20 years ago. And so we need those teams. And look, again, this is just an example. Doesn't matter. It's about the concept here. And if I miss some important functions, please forgive me. It's about the concept. So you have all of these subject matter expert groups or sub-teams that deal with their specific specific tasks to get the drug where it needs to be through approval to the market and beyond. And they come together, the leads of those functions, those responsible for those functions, like Paul Reynolds was for commercial and Paul Ford was for clinical, medical. In that example, when we worked together, they come to the global project team where we sit together and oversee end-to-end what is happening with this drug. And so these sub-teams, they operate, they have to operate, they have their own plans, they have their own execution plans, but it has to fit together. That's why those hurdles cannot stand anymore, because, or those silos that you saw on the previous slide, it has to be integrated, because what we do today in clinical, even in preclinical, will reflect on what you can claim in the label later, and not to talk about payers, what endpoints you used in phase 2, or not even phase 3. Okay. Now, what's the mandate here of these teams? It's pursuing the asset vision. There has to be a vision. This is where we want to be. These are the patients we want to help in that way, and we want to allow them to have access to this drug. And that requires strategic program planning and execution oversight. Oh, I have it here. And so the team is accountable for the overall product strategy, owning the integrated product plan or strategy plan or other names. But there must be a plan that integrates functional critical parts. You know, I told you all of these functions. They all have deliverables, but they are so interconnected and interdependent what they can deliver. So that's the view that this team has to have. It's actually here. Focus on functional interdependencies. That's what the global project team does. It does not solve clinical development plan. Paul can do that much better than a bunch of us, me, project leader, CMC, and I don't know what. But we have to be able to feed in, because without drug, there is no study. Without commercial, we don't know which endpoints to put in the closed testing strategy to control for alpha, because they end up in the label, and without that, they cannot promote of them, and so on. It's very, very connected. And that's these global product teams. Why are they global? Because everything we do in pharma, we do for multiple markets, because we cannot afford separate developments. There are occasions where it has to be done, but you know what I'm talking about. So then, you know, once we have all of these functional plans, clinical development plan, regulatory plan, CMC plan, they come together, and then this team oversees that we're moving through deliverables and milestones, and that we stay within the approved strategy and budget, because we do report to someone up there, and we have to stay within what's agreed. And if it's going out, we have to react and inform the rest of the organization. So this tracking and staying within strategy and budget is the mandate of this team. And of course, we have to be forward-looking and identify project risks, scenario play, have a plan B, and resolve issues and escalate as required. Conflict resolution, decision-making, very important. And you know that this is a major issue in many human organizations, not just pharma, just because of human nature. I want to spend a minute, something that's dear to my heart, because there is, so I spoke about different functions on that team, but I didn't mention really project leaders and project managers, what they really do. Now, most of my career, I declare I was in a role of a project leader, and so many times I was approached for a position of a project manager, because people think that's the same thing. And actually, it's also used interchangeably by many people. Please don't do that. These are two totally different, equally important roles. So project leaders are content drivers, okay? They manage the team. So one is the leadership aspect, and I'll talk about it next. But if we talk about the content, it's really the content expertise. Someone who's a successful project leader should ideally understand, not in details. We are not there to step on the toes of subject matter experts, because we don't know better than them. But we are there to understand how these pieces of puzzle must fit together. Otherwise, again, you are back to the first slide. And so that's the content, and also a view, big picture view on end-to-end drug development. One has to understand interdependencies and actually have a vision and responsible for that vision of the project. and certainly a huge effort on stakeholder management. I'll talk about that later. Project managers are focused on coordinating the project. You know, do we meet objectives? Do we stay in what we are mandated with? FTEs? Do we stay within the budget? Where are the milestones? What are the benchmarks? How do we plan? Project management, budget management. If I tell you that me, on this side, never in my life I have logged in to project management platform any. Neither Microsoft Project, nor Planisware, nor Smartsheet, whatever. 0 times in my life. And people say I'm relatively doing a good job on this end, and never once. So I'm not a project manager. I do not qualify for that job. I just cannot do it. And so these two roles are very different. They have to work like this for us to be successful. So me and project manager, we talk every Monday morning, we align the week, and we debrief at the end of the week and speak many times in between, and sometimes do redundant roles, and we divide and conquer. So that there's no question. But these are different skill sets. I would never make a good project manager. That's for sure. I would fail. But I want to, because I was heading a function of project leaders in last 2 companies. We post an opening, we get applications from 50 people, of those 45 project managers. And people do not understand the difference. Sorry, this was for my soul a bit, because I spent so much time on trying to explain. Okay, now, what are the relations at the teams and with the governance? Because everybody has a boss in the end, and so does this team, and those above that team, and so on. And so if we talk about relations at the project team, functional experts, they lead their respective sub-teams. I showed at the first slide, and they come, a single person, to the GPT and talks for that team, for their area of expertise. In principle, each function is represented with 1 member, but I'll come to that in a minute. And GPT membership may change depending on the stage of development. And let me talk about this everlasting challenge to keep the team size optimal. There is a huge fear of missing out ingrained in our human brains, because we like to be in control. That's a defense mechanism for us to feel better. It's a comfort zone, because we know how we do things. And we have to deal with this at every level. And here, oh my God, everyone wants to be at a GPT because they think they are not relevant if they are not at a GPT. This is totally not correct. And they just want to be at the meetings, like the meetings is the only thing that GPT does, you know. But they have to be at these meetings. And so many, and me as a project leader, on weekly basis, I would get complaints from the line functions or the people themselves that they would like to join that team. Now, I've been really trying to fend it off at about 10 people core team. As Paul said, broader team, it was 30. In our case, can be much bigger in bigger companies. But why about 10? First of all, or maybe I save that for the next section where I talk about functional teams, but you have to create sense of belonging and safe space where people can, first of all of them speak up, even those most introverts. It's your job as a leader of the team to call them out and give them space over others. And also, you have to have a space where people can laugh and cry and actually share personal traumas that they experienced that week, or maybe celebrate successes at work. It is really important for the motivation, and maybe some of you are not big on those soft things, but I'm sorry. It's really important for long term. Short term, forget them, I agree. Cut it, fine, it looks good short term. Longer term, if you want commitment, it's really important that to get this right. And this cannot be done with huge groups. It cannot be done. It's like a family. You have to allow space for everyone, and we don't have that much space or time. And so you choose those that are most important for the project in development. Of course, you have to communicate to the rest of the organization, and I'll come to that. And they have to, those who sit at the project team, Paul, and other Pauls, we had 4 Pauls. they have to speak for their function. Because what happens is, we align at the project team, and they come with their expert view, and we count on them, and we align on the strategy that takes that into account. And then we come to the decision-making body, to present our strategy, development committee, portfolio committee, call it as you wish. And the person in their line challenges them and doesn't agree. And we developed entire strategy based on the input from their function. This is so often. And there is a lot of ego, clearly. We are human beings. But there is also a lack of understanding how important is stakeholder management and how important it is to spend that time to align your functions. So that's another thing I insist on. In terms of governance, so these are these committees that we report to. Yes, we present the strategy, they agree to it, and then we have to stick within it and make it happen, right? Make it happen. And we have to watch for deviations because we are responsible for the bigger picture of the enterprise too. Now on the softer part. Am I too fast? Because I'm trying to cover everything and we're a little bit delayed in the start. The teams need to be functional. Now that's the soft part. If you allow me, it means a lot to me. So how do we work? We all get frustrated with decisions that we don't understand. I have a segment in this presentation that's called Fair Process Leadership, but I don't know if we'll have time. Let's see how we progress. But what we need to try, I say need to try because I'm not good at that either, is to try to focus the team on what we can do, okay? And not bother with things that are outside of our control, because that strictly frustrates us. And it's not always just because management is ignorant. It's because they have information that we don't have. The thing is, they don't share it. And this is this fair process that I'll come later to. But so focus, as long as we do the best we can for whatever we need to do, that's it. There's nothing else we can do. And if things go wrong, but at least we know we did the best. That's when we can feel well, okay? And we cannot get frustrated with more than that. And there I put, seek clarity from leaders and decision makers to avoid wasting time. Represent the function to the GPT. I talked about that. Please align with your function, line function. Don't waste our time either. This, maximize on expertise and personality synergies for the benefit of the program. Now, the fit. It's really important, and I think it's often overlooked. You certainly experienced people in your life, in the working life, but maybe in your other life, that excelled in some role, and they were moved to another role, and they really underperformed, and vice versa. They were mediocre in a certain role, and suddenly they are put in a different context, and they are really doing great. And this is about the fit. We, the leaders, and this is for every team, I don't mean leaders of the company, leaders of any group of people. It is our job to actually find where that person's expertise at that given time is best fitted to allow them to actually blossom and do the best for our project. And that fit piece in the leadership is sometimes neglected. You really need to know how to help position or talk to their bosses. Look, maybe not for this, but put him or her, or put them on this, because this is where, and then we will compensate the other part with something else. That's a really important part of leadership. One has to be observant for that. And sharing the information. That's about FOMO, fear of missing out. Not just aligning, but also to keep people feel that they matter. They do matter. People in the back office who do not sit in the meetings and teams equally matter, like the rest of us, because without them, some part of the job will stop. And we have to take that time to propagate the message, decisions, why, explain why are we doing that, to the rest of the organization, but also to all of these lines, to, again, this fair process that people feel they are engaged and informed and all of that. All this, each segment is stakeholder management. Seek clarity from leaders, the fit, this communication. Why I say this? So in my experience as a program lead myself, I think more than 50% of my time is stakeholder management. That's active stakeholder management. Scheduling calls every week with every core team member. Then maybe on monthly basis with the entire leadership team, CEO, or whatever. Then depending in which company, how big is the company and how many layers are there. Then with function heads, so bosses of your people. It's a lot. Half of my calendar used to be, or is if I'm in this role, talking to people. One has to stomach that. It takes a lot of energy because you one-on-ones, I don't know if that's your experience, especially on Zoom and Teams, and since we are electronic, one-on-ones are most intense because it's really all you. It's your head there. There's no escape. No, seriously. It's draining to have 5, 6 one-on-one meetings in the day. Being in a bigger meeting is much easier. The focus is not on you. I think it potentiated the drain, all of this looking straight to the face. I don't know, Few concepts, and I'm sorry if you don't like this soft stuff, but I think it's really important. There's no functioning team without trust, and there is no good leadership without trust. What I took this, it's from Harvard Business Reviews, there is a reference there. None of this is my drawing. You have to be competent. First of all, the person who you deal with has to say, I know you can do it, your reasoning and judgment are sound. No one will follow you, and follow in inverted commas, because if we have leaders, we have followers, if you don't know your stuff. And that's really, you can fake it, but you will not make it ultimately. Because short term, yeah, but longer term, if you do not know what you're talking about, and also if you do not say what you don't know, they will not trust you. They will just not buy. They will not listen to you anymore. Authenticity. All of us on a subconscious level see through that thing. We don't think about, oh, he's authentic and he's pretending. We don't think actively, but we develop resistance towards something which is faked. And authenticity in leadership and in the teams, those people, 10 people, 30 people, is really important. And empathy. If we do not show that if we do not genuinely care for that other person, I said we cried and laughed, and we did cry and laugh in that team. Every project team meeting, we had the first 10, 15 minutes just to talk what's up with us. And this is, so if you put these things together, people can trust you. Otherwise, there is always, and trust is the foundation of any collaboration, any life and relationships, not just think about it, it's for sure. It has to be. The trust is really a critical point. Another issue that we deal with at the teams is, again, you saw this, people are there to prove them. There are some drivers in us that drive us to listen to reply and not listen to understand. The sentence is not finished yet of the previous person. 3 people already have open mouths and just waiting to jump in. And in some cultures like mine, we jump in. Croatia, we speak on top of each other. In the Mediterranean, maybe you noticed that. But this is a big thing, and if this team that I'm talking about, the program team, project team, can install the culture of allowing each other to be heard. This is active listening. This is not listening, just being quiet. This is really listening. That goes a long way, because we then allow ourselves to understand where the other person is coming from. Otherwise, we just don't care. We just care for what we need to do to release our pressure. And that ties into this. And this is really something for me, because I speak up often. And it's true, this has been my problem, that I feel I always have to contribute. And no, it's not true. absolutely not true. The person who speaks the most is not the smartest person in the room. And ask yourself, does this need to be said? So if you find yourself in a situation that you want to respond to the previous speaker and you are not listening anymore, ask yourself, does this need to be said? Okay, yeah, it would be good that this is corrected by me, or maybe it's better suited with another person from another angle, from another expertise. And now, does it need to be said now? Or maybe in a different forum, or maybe not at all. Only if the three are yes, say it. This is for me, a difficult one, but this is really a good one. I like it because I think it's a really good checklist. Now, how much time do I have? 20. Oh, because maybe I have 10 more minutes, and then we can chat. Only few slides, and forgive me, I'm a little bit squeezing my beliefs here, and I spoke about fair process. What is fair process? So that's actually a leadership concept. It's published. There are many, not just Harvard Business Review papers, but also scientific papers. And it's based, when we and other people who were kids were very small, very quickly, as soon as we start speaking, why can he have it and I cannot? Why can she do that and I cannot? Right, that's ingrained in human nature, possibly evolutionary, I have no idea, didn't check on that part. But so this concept of fairness is part of our psyche, it's part of human nature. And it's really interesting how it's not utilized more as a strategy to get things done. And not only that, I think we owe respect to people, ultimately, to take them through that process, not just for interest of getting things done. Now, it's based on 3 key principles: engagement, involving people in decisions that affect them. I know you'll say that's not possible. We cannot consult everyone. But it has to be done. It can be done in a very simple way, and the goal can be achieved. Explanation, clearly communicating the reasoning behind decisions. Communication is the key for any team, for any decision, for any change management, anything. Expectation clarity. Once the decision is made, set clear expectations for the rest of the organization. You certainly, if we talk about organizations, we can talk about teams, but you are certainly aware that after the big layoffs, the biggest issue is with people who stay, and no one cares about them. We fight for packages for those who leave for good reason, but actually no one takes care for the morale and those who stay. It's really true. Help people understand why that happened and set the expectation in front of them, and then tell them why that was beneficial in due time, right? When we have some metrics to do that. In business, I will not, in the interest of time, but it's clear, builds trust and credibility with teams, encourages commitment and cooperation, reduces resistance to change, enhances performance, creates a culture of transparency and accountability. Most importantly, it's highly published in the engineering industries, automobile or other left-brain industries. They did studies on productivity after they employ fair process in any process in the company, change or teams, versus just doing it without explaining to people why they did it and actually not giving them clear expectations what's next. There is improvements, and again, there are some, but there are more citations. I have them if you want. Improves productivity and ultimately profitability, right? Because that's what we want in business. So this is a business concept. This is not a blah, blah, and it's quite documented. And I will not spend much time here because we don't have time. There is this slide where we talk about communication, clarity, consistency, changeability with evidence. Give me evidence what happened with that change. Give me a check in 3 months and say, look, we improved this, we improved that. You know, there is a dip first, but then we go out after the change, or in the team after the decision is made. It's the same thing. Just treat people with dignity, I think, bottom line. All right, so last 2 slides. Now, what does this mean? No, I apologize. Not everyone here is a solo consultant. And I have been only for a few months. I did do it for 9 months before the last 2 companies. And this last company is just several months that I'm back to my self-employment framework. But the question is, now I told you about these teams, right? But how do we, as external, you know, can we really do these things that I was talking about here? Because as external, we're typically providing targeted and limited duration of input, and not to mention project leaders. So in my background, very hard to find clients, because typically program leads that I would do, or something like that at a strategic level, they want to have them internal. So even when I start consulting with a company, after 3 months, they come back and say, you either come internal or you are out, because it's a very important role, and you don't show enough commitment if you're not internal. Someone reminded me just talking before that there is not a lot of commitment often from internal people to the companies. So that you know this argument, and I will not forget that. Because I'm so many times challenged, how can you do such an important role if you are external? It's a really good point, actually, that morale is not always very high, even for people who are on the payroll. So it's, I'm trying to think here, and I'll think with you together, which leadership skills are key when we consult? How can we be leaders when we are hired for someone else to make a decision? You know, I don't know what are your thoughts, and I'm curious. I put 2 just to maybe stimulate a little bit. Knowing where to place our attention, because you know when we come, it's different. We are not now responsible for everything. So the skill is also to know where you spend your capital that you have with that company in terms of time they give you to speak, time to give you to work. Where do you make a difference for them? And then another one, engaging in meaningful conversation, not just any conversation. It has to be condensed. It has to be more meaningful than it would be if you are diluted in the payroll role. You know what I mean? So what are your views? Any ideas here? Which leadership skills are key when consulting? What skills are you using to actually make a difference? Or you just do your job, collect a check, and go out?
I think flexibility and adaptability.
Flexibility and adaptability. Anyone else?
I think bringing your authentic self to that conversation, because I think for me, I'm always trying to be a critical friend, so that active listening and then coming back and going, I think I heard this, this is what you wanted, and sometimes I feel that clients don't always know what they want.
Yes.
So we're often trying to ask open questions in order to be able to reflect back what we think they need as opposed to what they think they want.
Has everyone heard this?
Yeah.
It's a good...
Well, I think sometimes it can be worse than that, which is they're really, really strong in their view about what they think they need. And they're very wedded to it, right?
Yes,
and
yes.
sometimes you have a deeper wisdom that suggests that maybe they should explore alternatives that aren't that.
We just need it on the mic, because if it's not on the mic, it never happened.
Oh, YouTube. Oh.
Then it never happened. Sorry, did everyone hear that? No, okay. So my point was just spinning and pivoting off that point, which is that sometimes there's ambiguity about what is the best path forward in terms of decision making. And I think that in my experience, sometimes there are clients that are very clear about what they want, the direction they're taking with their teams. And it's difficult to move them in a different direction. And sometimes illumination can come in the form of helping them work through other alternatives and not just the one that they're on. Not asking them to leave it behind, but just say, look, that could be one path, but have you considered these other options, and those are the pros and cons?
Thank you.
Thanks, Sanda. Great talk so far. One of the things we were thinking yesterday, I'm one of the Phraktion co-founders, was the ability to help clients think. Because we have an independence and we're outside the politics. And I think it comes from the previous point. They very often have a predetermined idea of where they're going. And actually, why have they called us in?
They called you in as an alibi.
Well, sometimes, but they're also, if we are true to them, we're also giving them fresh opinion based on experience that they don't possess in their own organisation, and we should help them listen, because sometimes there may be another way, and that's possibly what we bring.
You're talking soft skills now.
Okay.
Because if they would only listen on your expertise, you wouldn't be wondering. They would be open for the options, or maybe different options than them. But you are right. They actually bring you in and tell you this has to be the outcome, not in those words. But I'm now a project leader and employing consultants. I'm a contract project leader, employing consultants to do something. And we already know what the outcome has to be because management already decided. So there must be a different level at which we can connect if we want to change that, because they are not interested in the expert. Maybe we have to somehow bring in question their reasoning and use maybe ambiguity, provoking ambiguity and making them think themselves rather than us telling them what to do, because this doesn't go for any of us, right? We don't like to be told what to do.
I think Sheila's got a question.
Great question answers. Sorry. Great answers. I'd just like to build on a couple of points here and say a couple of things that have been really useful is confidence and inspiration. So giving the client that's hiring you confidence in your ability, and then from a team perspective, giving confidence and inspiration, and giving the team the space to voice their thoughts, voice their alternate suggestions, which then goes back to the client, because you are not political. You're the outsider. We can say those things, but it's always better for a team to say those things than you as an individual. And again, in the first instance, when you're in that situation of being hired, talking to the hiring manager, giving them confidence and saying, sure, I can do that, and then going away and having your panic attack and calling a friend, what do I do?
Yeah. We are whisperers, that's what you're suggesting,
Yes.
to those who then have an ability to transmit the message internally.
And then for the team, being a focus and directing the conversation so that the team develops the conversation.
That they feel they did it.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, to get,
Yeah,
you want to
we have
wrap up,
get,
and then we can maybe get a couple of questions right at the end. I
Okay,
think.
let's finish and then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
I really, so I want to go through this. This is for a little bit changing gears, but I want to get through this one slide, and this is now for us consultants. 85, this is what I found in other places, of individual consultants do not have a trusted pipeline. Okay, now I'm a little bit linking to how we exercise leadership, but it's changing gears completely from teams, but I wanted to capture this. 85 of self-employed, so solo entrepreneurs, do not have a trusted pipeline. It's different if you work in McKinsey or somewhere. I'm talking about people like many people in this room. What I also found is that experts' original content, I'll come back to that, is a key element for being retained. So how can we help ourselves? And this is from my experience. I had no idea how to pitch myself. Go out and talk if you're starting. Of course, if you're already profi, you know this. Go out and talk to others who do this and ask them how you sound. Pitch to them. So many times I got horrible feedback. In the beginning, probably I would still get it. And be crystal clear on what you are doing, really, what you're offering. Okay, you have to stay broad initially. We have to start from somewhere, right? But choose what not to do. That's a huge, big step, first step. And then test yourself with people, with clients, etc. And then in a 6-month time, that was my experience, you will be able to define your niche. If you keep talking without feedback, nothing this will happen. And now this is personal. Please avoid generalist approach. So I work with consultants in my role. When they come with something that I can today type and GPT will do it 3 times better than then, I'm meaning generalized, and I'll explain what. I use GPT on daily basis for everything. But what I mean here is when they give me agnostic statements that apply to every company, it's really not nice. It's actually offensive because you hire them for something, they promise they can deliver, and they just waste your time because then you have to reset with them and please do this and you do their work. So I think that's really putting off a lot of people. If you approach like, please tell them why you can solve their issue at that time in that moment, not this is how it's done. That's just my take. Then think about, can your work be scaled up? Because at some point, you have to be able to first learn from what you did to be better at the next place or next client, but also to reuse your work in one way or another. So think about if your niche is giving you enough market to actually survive financially and otherwise. So these are some things how maybe you can think if you start. Now focus on problems with significant impact. Of course, we would all like this, right? Significant impact for the client. It's not always like that. But that is about focusing on meaningful things that we talked about before. If you if you have enough experience and cast a wider net, you will be able to see where potential needs are and then intervene with those people or clients or something to actually make a difference. Always align with your expertise. Someone mentioned, do not promise that you can do something and then you panic. I really advise against this. It's better to pass the job than to do it because you'll be read through sooner or later and the word is spreading. This is a very small world. And so don't risk. Of course, sometimes you need to because we need to have salary or something, but you cannot demonstrate authority if you don't know what you're talking about. Again, that's the... sorry if I'm... English is not my first language, always a nice excuse. Urgency. Keep an eye open for those that may need. That's what happened to me now. When I said they called me back. Oh my God, panic. That is when you get jobs that normally you do not get. Or this is when you will be in a good position to dictate the pace of work, the conditions. There are so many urgencies in our industry nowadays. There is change everywhere and then rechange. And there is always something missing. And so think about that. And someone also, I think, mentioned this before. Identify a decision maker on an emotional level. Now, decision maker is a person who wants to retain you for the job, right? Someone who will sign. Decision maker is not me, I connect Paul with someone. No, it's that someone who has a power to sign the budget for you to work. You have to connect them on the emotional. You have to show them that you understand those hidden drivers that bother them. You have to understand why, really why, they want to have you. If it's alibi, understand it. And say, I'll help you. I'll help you make that case. I'll be your whisperer. I'll do it for you. You have to understand, try to connect. That will go a long way. And then those hidden business drivers in the organization in order to be retained. So these are my 2 cents. And sorry, I have to finish with this slide. I cannot. I know I'm over time. And Paul saw it many times, and this is what we put for our project team and in our collaborations with other companies. Now, this is Coach Mike Krzyzewski, Coach K of Duke, for those of you who ever followed college basketball. My both kids played college basketball in the US and studied, so I'm all into this. He wrote a book, Leading with a Heart, in 2000. He was brilliant in the way he managed the team. So he is a true leader, a good coach in that sense, and not so many, I cannot say bad words on YouTube, who we have seen in this world. And similar is in the business world. But he said, these are the 5 rules. He said, that's the 5 fingers on the hand. And only when all 5 are functional, you can have the fist, and then you can kick and go forward. If any of them is standing out, you cannot. You break your fist. And he said this is how he worked with his basketball team at Duke University. Communication, number 1. Speak the truth. Talk to each other right away if there is an issue. If things are not going well, corrections can be implemented immediately. It's critical not to procrastinate on bad things. That's poison. If it's going well, compliment each other. It's not waste of time. Trust. Be open and truthful to each other. I know it sounds generalistic, as I said before, not to be, but it's really true. Collective responsibility. People are going to make mistakes. We all are going to make mistakes. No excuses and finger pointing. We win or we lose together in the team. Okay, it's just like that. Caring. Make time for the personal attention to our colleagues. Speak up if you see they struggle or need help. The moment of weakness by any individual on the team will be compensated by other team members if we act that way. It is in our interest to make things happen. Remember, it's not in our interest to finger point and stall the process. It's in our interest to overcome it and move the project forward. And finally, be proud of what you do. Our own personal signature is on everything our team does, so take it personally, really, because that's why you are spending your time, your effort, your energy. It has to make sense. It has to be meaningful, and it has to be part of your pride of being able to contribute to something like that. And with that, I finish. Sorry for the long presentation.